Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fadwa Waswas, and I wanted to touch base on something that I will actually explore a little bit further. It's about self-love. And I'm going to go to my Facebook page for Engage Minnesota and discuss some issues that I have talked about with self-love. One of the biggest problems that I have with individuals who preach self-love is simply that I have never gotten into like an argument with that group that love came out of them. What really came out of them was malice, vindictiveness, if you will, like a kind of spitefulness. It's and I mentioned it, in fact, one time because when you're young, you accept what people preach because of the fact that they have a title and they say they're Muslim and they're specialists in psychology. So I'm referring to here my younger days, and they would preach self-love, and you assume that that's something beneficial. All you looked at was their title and their credentials. You didn't really think about it or reflect about it much. And I mentioned, in fact, when I wrote Leave, I asked quite a few people on the issue of the Layla and Qais story, because it bothered me quite a lot, but I kind of kept my opinions to myself because for a long time, I just was really bothered by how people understood love and how people expressed love. And I found that love, like that Layla and Qais story, was more about obsession and infatuation. And the person, yes, you could say Qais, and here I'm referring to just a general thing, not anyone in general, and not anyone specific, claimed to love Layla. But the essence for me, like at the time, I was like, bottled up and thinking about it, like something about this is just strange, because when you love somebody, then you're able to let him go. So I mentioned that, in fact, that God is able to let Adam upon in peace come down to earth and grow, as a prophet and a vicegerent on earth, and bring us here to grow. Some will say it's an act of punishment. I mean, it's a consequence to Adam's actions, but it's also an act of love. That's how I understood it. And the idea of being attached to something such a degree that they become a possession, not a human being who has like a way to grow, bothered me for a very long time. And I like the way that Prophet Muhammad, upon him peace and blessings, like when he had marital problems with his spouses. In fact, I used that in my own life journey, that he gave them, the choice to stay or to leave. And I felt that was a more genuine expression of love. Like he wasn't treating them, I mean, to me, it indicated he wasn't treating them as property or possessions. I thought it was a beautiful display of genuine and sincere and true love. But you heard so many speakers, over time, over the years, and they would preach, self-love, and they would keep preaching it. And it got kind of like bothersome. And then you started to hear also from other scholars, and they would mention the Qais and Layla story. And I remember an email to Islam Online because it disturbed me a lot. And I recall something locally had taken place. And so I just needed some clarification regarding this matter. And so I expressed myself, and I said, I feel like this self-love crowd, I didn't use the word self-love, I use the Layla and Kai story, but they seem to be vindictive. Like, first they're running after you, I love you, I love you, I love you, but they're treating you like a possession. So it's like, and then if you have a misunderstanding with them, Kais felt like he deserved Layla, and using the story here, I'm referring to. But then he treated Layla as property or possession. If you appreciate something, you appreciate who they are. And Layla is a human being. She has the right to say yes, and she has the right to say no. And when you rob another from these, rights, then you're treating them as a possession, you're treating them as an object. And usually individuals like that, because that love comes from the self. And what is the self? It's vindictive. We see it in the Quran. If you look throughout the Quran, and I mentioned it more than once, that self, the love that comes from the self, that is, when they are, thrown, the leaders and their followers are thrown in hellfire, what happens to the followers? Supposedly they said they loved. It bothered me so much. Yeah, but then when you read the Quran, it's just so beautiful. It pointed out exactly how I felt all these years. It was like they're like double portion, for these people. You're following them, claiming all this love. And that's why my upcoming book is titled Love is Deeper Than Words. But then where did this vindictiveness come from? Supposedly you loved these individuals, and you were following them, and you were praising them in your life, and praising, and you loved. And then what? And then what happened? And then that love became, turned into malice and hatred. And that's literally what I've seen in my own life journey. It's these people who preach love. If you have a misunderstanding with them, supposedly they're full of love. This is what they claim: self-love, self-love, self-love. And if you have a misunderstanding with them, suddenly they're very, very vindictive and very, very spiteful, and they're full of malice. And despite the fact that you see, I can speak for myself, I can express my own feelings, I can express my own thoughts, and I would like you to exit my life gracefully, they still cannot hear you. Why? Because they treat you as a possession. They rob you from the right to say, I want you to exit. That's something they cannot. And if you try to act like a human being who wants the right to make choices and to disagree, they can't let you go. They treat you just like Qais treated Layla. They hold on to you like a possession, like property. And then they become, full of malice and vindictiveness. And it's like, I don't know if you call that love. If the Prophet, upon him peace and blessings, and I mentioned that in that email, I was trying to find it because Islam Online, the issue with them was that they were taken, I think, over by quite a few like individuals, and then it's changed into some other like Islam something, and then I think not on Islam. Once that self-love crew kind of came on, I stopped listening to them or following them. Before it was, I think, led by Yusuf al-Qaradawi. I had a lot of respect for Yusuf al-Qaradawi growing up because I used to read his books and watch, his programs. And I like the fact in the way that when he disagreed with someone, that's why I also like Ramadan al-Buti, when he disagreed with someone, that he was willing to give them space on at that time, islamonline.net, let them present their argument, and then he would voice like why he disagreed with their argument. I thought that was very dignified and respectful of him when he did that. In fact, when Amina Wadud, I believe, came out with the woman leading the prayer, everybody was like, afraid to say a word and listen to her, and immediately wanted to shut her down. It's that mentality of the faith is so weak that even if you disagree with someone, you can't even listen to their argument. But Yusuf al-Qaradawi, I remember at the time, there were articles by Amina Wadud on the website, and she was presenting her argument, presenting her knowledge and why she agreed, or why she felt passionately about what she felt. And he had it on there, like, without feeling like, and I respected that, without feeling threatened. I respected that. And he, of course, had his own views, and he responded in a very dignified manner why he disagreed with that view, which is, it opens up, again, respect, a dignified discussion. But later on, that website was taken by individuals who can best be described as weak in faith. There's a lot of this self-love, but then when you clash or disagree with them, they become very spiteful, and they have malice, and they can't accept that you listen to what they had to say, and you don't agree with their views, and you just want to part ways in peace. They treat you like property, like kind of Layla and Kai's story. And they're like, we're doing this for love. Love. Why is there malice? How do you explain the malice coming out of you? How do you explain the spitefulness? What you're full of is what comes out of you. If you're full of all this love, then that's what comes out of you. If you're full of compassion, then that's what comes out of you. If you're full of God and you're full of, whatever it is that you claim to be a faith, that faith gives you, and that's what will come out of you. Like if you're somebody who, in your weakness, you pray to God and you submit it to God and you recognize His strength, then that's what comes out of you. But what we're seeing coming out of such individuals who act kind of like the Qais and Layla story is malice, is vindictiveness. It reminds me of that verse in the Quran, double portion for you both. Like what comes out is not love. What comes out is not compassion. They're always asking you to do what they themselves will not do. They want to give you sincere advice. It doesn't apply to you. The advice is not applicable to anything you're going through. And claim love and sing the love song. Yet if you were to treat them the same way, they would accuse you of slander. So they live in this kind of alternate universe where they hide behind these, self realities. But if they're listening deeply and they just look at their actions and reactions, one sees only spite, vindictiveness, and malice. And like I said, I don't have that email that I sent to Islam Online. But it's that mentality of being obsessed and treating another human being as property. and you're hiding under the claims of love. It doesn't necessarily have to be a person who's like a lover, like as in between like romantic sense. Could even be like, you know, sisterly or brotherly, like you're not letting go. You have that kais mentality. And it's not love. What it is possessiveness. It's a desire for control. You don't have control over yourself, but you want to control others. You don't want anyone to control you, but you want to control others. And so it's really problematic. And I mentioned that over and over again about, you know, how could you be full of all this love? Because love, its source is God. And we saw its manifestation in Prophet Muhammad, upon him peace and blessings, with the community members, as well as with his spouses. You know, there wasn't this possessiveness, kind of like the Qais and Layla story. He was not like this holding on, like, you know, mentally, emotionally, socially trying to control, you know, the living breath out of, you know, his followers. It was a beautiful relationship of nurturing and growth and inviting, you know, like I had mentioned recently, inviting people with beautiful wisdom, not running around trying to compel anyone to the faith. It's problematic, like I said, but this is one of the reasons that I have really all through my life had an issue with this self-love crowd. And anyone who preaches self-love, self-compassion, excuse me, self-forgiveness, you know, they'll preach self-everything. Notice they'll preach, and then where do they stop? They stop at self-control. They're like, you can't control me. Well, what happened to self, you know, blah, blah. Can you control yourself? Why should I have to control you? You know, if you can give yourself self-love and self-forgiveness and self-compassion, self this and this and that, can't you arrive at the self-control phase? And that's what really ticks me off all these years, is they can do all these things from the self, except self-control. And it becomes kind of a way of self-deception, because that's the logic of self-deception. You know, as you hide behind, you know, love, compassion, blah, 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 you know, all claiming it to the self, but you can't control yourself. You can't make choices. And so this is what happens when they get in hellfire. What do? They blame people that they used to praise, claiming to have loved them in the world. But then on the day of judgment, when God tells them and their followers, enter hellfire, then it's like those that they claim to love, that they followed, they refuse to reflect and think and turn to God, seeking guidance. And they become what? They become, now they're like double portion for you, you know, double portion for those people, and they pray to God now against them. So they did not accept making choices in the world or controlling themselves in the world, because they lived the life of Qais and Layla. They lived the life of possessiveness, of treating people as property. You know, I would love to guide every person to Islam, but they're not my property. They're God's property. All you could do really is invite with beautiful wisdom, and they have to make a choice, because that's what love is about. It's about choice. It's embedded in choice. Choice first and foremost for yourself. You have to make a choice. You have to read, you have to reflect. You have to recognize on the day of judgment, you can't say, I'm misguided or I ended up in hellfire because this person misled me. It's not just Satan, but even the leaders and those who were before you. You can't point fingers at them. But what happens is these individuals in the world will profess love, a relationship with these people based on love. And God exposes that relationship in the hereafter. That relationship will be based on selfishness. And what comes out of the self? Vindictiveness, malice, spitefulness. I want to read two of the verses or some of them just to show you what I'm referring to. In chapter 33, verse 68, it says, Al-Ahzab, our Lord, give them double the punishment and curse them with a mighty curse. It says the people who, again, they profess love in this world, and then it's love from the self. It's really kind of that love that comes out of, again, not, I interviewed Kais Arthur, so this is not referring to Kais Arthur or anything. It's referring to that Kais love, that story, Kais and Layla. Give them a great curse. Excuse me. Whereas the Prophet, upon him peace and blessings, on the day of judgment, will be saying, ummati, ummati, because it's genuine, true love. Those who had the self-love, what I like to call it, whenever you ever clash with them, whether in this world or in the hereafter, when you deal with the consequences of following them, they always become vindictive, spiteful, malice. How do you explain that? How do you reconcile that? In another verse in the Quran, here I'm looking at chapter 7, verse 38. It's the chapter Al-A'raf, or the heights, you might say. And he will say, enter you in the company of people who passed away before you. Now the love is between them and people who were misled before them. Men and jinns into the fire. Mankind and jinn, you could say, not just the male gender. Every time a new people enters, these were the ones who followed them, it curses its sister people that went before. So first they followed out of love, and now when they find the consequences of blindly, uncritically following, what happens to that love, which comes from the self, really? Becomes vindictive, it's malice, spiteful, until they follow each other all into the fire. Says the last about the first. Now listen to what they say. Our Lord, it is these that misled us, so give them double penalty in the fire. He will say, doubled for all. But this you do not understand. So I'm not going to answer the question, but try to research this verse. What is it that they don't understand? What is it that they're not understanding? In chapter 17, verse 75, the night journey, it is at Isra. In that case, we should have made thee taste an equal portion of the punishment in this life and an equal portion in death. And moreover, thou would have found none to help thee against us. What is this one referring to? If we look at the verse before it, it says, and had we not strengthened you, you would have almost inclined to them a little. This is again in the night journey. So where did the strength come from? Had we not strengthened thee, you would have almost inclined to them a little. Where did the strength come from? Came from God. Where did the guidance come from? From God. Let's look at the verse above that. And indeed, they were about to tempt you away from that which we revealed to you in order to make you invent about something else. And then they would have taken you as a friend. Where's that friendship again about? That love, somebody who's like a khalil, like an intimate friend. There's Rafiq and there's a khalil, like, they say Sayyidina Ibrahim is Khalilullah. He's not just a friend like a Rafiq, he's that very intimate friend, that there's love and there's compassion and, professing all of these things. But what happens before that? And when I gave you those other verses, those individuals who mislead you, what happens on the day of judgment? And they're like double portion for you. But if we read, like if we go to the night journey, where did the prophet, get that strength? Was it from self? Was he practicing self-love, self-forgiveness, self-compassion? Or was he turning to God and seeking strength from God and seeking guidance from God? And God protected him from being misled by these individuals. Something again for us to reflect on when we're constantly obsessed with this self-love phase that we're constantly preaching. I don't want to go like too much further into this, but I would like encourage you to look at some of these verses. And I would encourage you to reconsider this self-love mentality that what I see, it's literally another just manifestation of that Qais and Layla story. I mean, it's vindictive. If you've ever seen individuals who are in a romantic sense where either one person ran after the other, like it doesn't have to be Qais running after Layla, but Layla running after Qais. Let's just say that, like Zulaykha running after, in fact, there is in the Quran, Zulaykha running after Prophet Yusuf. That's an example of that. What happens to these individuals when they cannot possess the object of their love? If we compare that to Prophet Muhammad, upon him peace and blessings, he loved his spouses, but a genuine, true, respectful love, dignified love. When there was a misunderstanding, what came out of that misunderstanding? Spite, malice. Like a lot of times when you get married, when you have a misunderstanding, you can really tell what's inside somebody. Suddenly, they want to they become vindictive and hateful. Do they offer you a gift and say, we're not able to reconcile and let you go in peace, like the way the Prophet did? How many people follow that sunnah? How many people follow that sunnah? They say, we're not able to come to common terms, or this is, there's a misunderstanding, we're not able to resolve it. Let's end in peace. Give the person a generous, gift and move on in peace. How many respond that way? What did Zulaykha do? She put Joseph in prison. And the same thing we see, like if you open up your eyes, a lot of men, what do they do once they divorce their spouse? Before the marriage, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And they're running left and right, asking everybody to, on their behalf, intervene, intercede, and that they love you in a way that no one else can love you. Okay, and then you have misunderstanding and what? Then they fight tooth and nail not to give you a penny, not to pay child support, not to give you your mahir or mu'akhir, not to give you any spousal alimony, even if and it's not just a one case, isolated case, like look at cases, not to give you, like, even if you have kids from the person, not to give you even, like, any spousal help to stand on your feet. They go on, they move ahead, and you're left struggling to fend for yourself. And before that, once it was engagement time, it was love, 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 love. They chased you with love. And then afterward, during a misunderstanding, vindictiveness, hatred, malice. This is what I have seen, either between community members, between spouses, between romantic love. It's that manifestation of the Layla and Kai story, where you're treating other people as possessions, where you're treating them as property. And what comes out of you during a misunderstanding or a disagreement, as one can see, is malice, is vindictiveness, is spitefulness. If we just listen to what is being said, what comes out of there? It's very similar to what we see about others. Sometimes it leads to lying, slander, backbiting, gossip, scheming, argumentation, like you're constantly, like, you can't let it go. You can't let it go. If the person goes, you just keep going. You just keep yapping. You can't let it go. Dehumanization and discrediting, like you try to marginalize the person. Distorting what they say, like a person is talking about their strengths and how God gave them strength, and you're distorting it into that something totally like slanderous. You misrepresent them. Harassment, someone is telling you in a very kind, in a very polite way, in a very dignified way, private, between you and your best friend, don't contact me anymore. And you refuse. You refuse to abide by it. So you harass them. Stalking, following them around the community, manufacturing evidence or manufacturing stories that have absolutely no shred of reality to them. Just totally, like, you just make stuff up. Like literally zero base. They're just baseless accusations. Mockery. Ha 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 ha, I can hear you when you're silent, you're in pain. Full of all this self-love. And you pray and pray and pray, and you're constantly preaching about the beauty and the love of prayer and prayer. Well, this is what's coming out of you, mockery. You're getting intoxicated and high on mockery. Eavesdropping, sending people claiming that you're not connected to them, and they're saying they're not connected to you. And then you test them and you have a conversation. Sure enough, the information reaches you. We know the hadith about eavesdropping. And feigning innocence, avoiding like independent investigation, just feigning innocence. Like if you reach out and you try to understand what's the story, everybody claims to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is what I have seen, not just now, present day or 10 days ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but throughout my life, this is what I have seen from the self-love, self-compassion, self-forgiveness, self-whatever crowd. It's everything except self-control. They literally have zero self-control. They don't know how to make choices. And because they don't know how to make choices, they say when you cannot control yourself, you obsess with controlling others. And this is why the issue of Qais and Layla, if you just kind of like listen to people tell that story, because Qais could not control himself, he wanted to control Layla. So on the outside, it looked like love. But the genuine true love was that of Prophet Muhammad. His wives chose to be with him, and he offered his wives a choice to be with him or to leave. That's genuine, true, dignified, respectful love. He was not like, when I read that story, like I argued with somebody locally at the time, because he was like, I don't know where he got his knowledge from, but he claimed that he has some Sharia degree, and he looked at that verse and he's like, and the Prophet even threatened them with divorce. And I read the same verses and I said, that's not how I read it. I read this as a genuine, beautiful manifestation of love. The Prophet did not treat them like the Qais and Layla story. He treated them as dignified, respectful human beings who can choose to be with him or choose to leave with a gift. And I said, if it was a threat, he would not have offered a gift. He was inviting them. He was not holding on like Qais and holding on to Layla. He wasn't treating them as property or possessions. He was treating them as dignified, respectful human beings, asking them to make a choice, not while feeling threatened, because he gave them a gift. And usually during that time, you could see like, you start to kind of calm down and recognize that that's genuine, true, a manifestation of love. So when you can't let people go, like, I love you, sister, and you're like, no, you don't. No, you don't. You treat people like property. You treat people like possessions. You don't allow people to go. And if they decide to go, you respond with spite and malice. You want to control everyone because you're out of control. And love is embedded in self-control. There's one thing that you have, it's a discipline. It's not in controlling others, it's in controlling yourself. That's what Ramadan invites us to, self-restraint, to control yourself, to restrain yourself. You love this and you love that and you love food and you love this and you're supposed to restrain yourself. If you can't restrain yourself in Ramadan, then you're literally like confessing that you have no love, or you don't even know what love is to begin with. You're just like the Qais and Layla story. You're like Qais. You're holding on to God, not because you love God, not because you made a choice to love God. You're holding on to God the way Qais held on to Layla, out of possessiveness. You're holding on to God out of emotional attachment. But it's not genuine and true love, which turns to God for guidance and turns to God for forgiveness and turns to God for love and turns to God for clarity. God is like property to you. If one listens to you speak about God, he's kind of like Layla is to Qais. It's this blind, you don't, you just want to hold on to God like he's yours. Not that he's, Adul Jalali wal Ikram, like he has his own station. And you're his property. But guess what? The atheist is his property, and the Christian is his property, and the Jew is his property. And people usually who love God, like, Qais loved Layla, they treat God like he's mine. He's my God. He's not your God. And so they become blind that they cannot harm others, that God might respond in their favor. Because they rob God from that choice. God is always on their side. He's just their buddy. They don't think of God at his own station and that all of these are his creation. That he might get angry that you're acting in a way that's malicious and vindictive, and he might give you punishment for your behavior. So when you rob God from the right to be angry at your behaviors, it means you don't have a genuine and true love of God. You treat him like Qais treated Layla. You think of him as a possession, as property. You're literally just engaged in self-deception. I hope you can reflect on this as you move on with your lives. I appreciate you keep your love to yourself. It's not appreciated.